Mech pilots, online. BattleTech manuals, online. Long-term memory, offline. All systems bungled. Initiating BungleTech podcast.
In our 35th deployment of BungleTech, my spheroid co-host Michael and I dive into the psyche, or perhaps psychosis, of Jamie Wolfe as we take a look at his annotated version of The Art of War. We then pause for a moment and discuss the variety of pronunciation mistakes we are making on a regular basis in our Rule Mistake Discovery segment. And then we wrap it all up by reading a sample chapter of The Art of War. Time to seize the reins of your chariot, MechWarriors. Our episode advances eastward, where, as Sun Tzu has taught us, terrain and timing shape victory.
Bonus objective. Extraordinary proclamation. Initiating.
In this, the spookiest of months, it is my great pleasure to welcome our newest member to Clan Kodama, an extremely skilled technician known only by his designation, the Rock 3393. His first assignment will be to the Bunker Refurbishment Program. As many of you know, sales of the Bunker Heavy Mech have been slower than expected, and returns, while unheard of in other mech lines, have been frequent for the Bunker. But fear not, with the help of the Rock 3393, we will soon have these refurbished units prepped and in the hands of our waiting clientele. Thank you for being a part of this, the Rock 3393. Selah.
This is Nathaniel Smithson reporting from the front. The mech hangars are alive with movement, MechWarriors suiting up, technicians scrambling, and the scent of freshly welded armor thick in the air. All forces are deploying to K-Seg 6, December 4th through 7th in Burnsville, Minnesota. Tournaments, campaigns, painting, and more. It is indeed a sight. Civilians and veterans alike are rolling out. This is a full spectrum engagement. Badges are now active with the full mission schedule being broadcast openly. You'll find Professor Michael and myself on the front lines of this valiant war effort, organized by WolfNet Radio and MN BattleTech. K-Seg 6 is looking to be the biggest conflict I have ever had the honor to report on. We'll see you on the battlefield. This has been Nathaniel Smithson, iron and boots on the ground, always first on the scene.
The conflict on Galatea continues to escalate as gang violence has intensified and skirmishes have broken out between mercenary units in the city and surrounding areas. Even in these violent times, however, there are tales of grit and heroism. After months of prolonged conflict, reports are common that alliances have begun to break down and infighting has started amongst several major mercenary companies. The reasons for these schisms are not clear, but may be simply a symptom of dwindling supplies and battlefield strain. There's at least one mech warrior, though, who thinks something else is going on. Jin Hak Jiaohao published a now viral trio examining the cord wreck of his Griffin, which he claims was sabotage. His claims have precipitated plenty of discussion on the LinkNet, but experts we spoke to suggested that with the level of damage to the mech, there's little chance of conclusively proving anything. In lighter news, one mech warrior, Mark Mako Corthalis, sent us this trio of his hatchet collection, as well as cockpit recordings from his Ostsoul as he managed to tear another of the 3-ton weapons off a wrecked hatchet man. Mako reports having 3 of them now, but doesn't indicate exactly how he transports them with the lance. I guess everyone needs a hobby. That's all for now, and these are tales of heroism in the sphere.
Primary objective, podcast topic segment, initiating.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 35 of BungleTech, a BattleTech podcast. Today, I'm once again privileged to be joined by this super sensual, forgot to Google a different word, spicy boy Michael.
That's me.
Oh boy, everybody. Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. You know, I was feeling a little bit down on this episode idea because I didn't like what we set out to do for this month. And then me and Michael were talking about beforehand, and we're sort of on the same page. So now I'm all of a sudden hyped about this episode. Today, Michael and I are going to talk about Sun Tzu, The Art of War, translated and annotated by Jamie Wolf. This is a book that was released. Many people got this as part of their pledge towards the Mercenaries Kickstarter, but you can also buy this book individually. Before we start talking about this book, I would like to give a quick shout out to the BattleTech podcast out there, that this is their focused reviewing and reading books, like essentially a book club, and a very fun one at that. And that is the Of Mechs and Men podcast. So if you haven't checked them out yet, check them out, because they're the people that read the words and say the smart things and understand language. And I don't know, they seem to do it a lot and be better at it. So if you liked our bungling our way through this book and our experiences, I really think you'll enjoy Of Mechs and Men. They're a cool crew.
Do you know if they've done this book?
I don't think they have, because they're doing the books in order of release date. Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
I see.
Now, this isn't really their style. They're doing more fiction stuff, but seriously, it's cool, especially like as someone who, you know, I actually was reading some books along with them as I was following in the podcast, because like I did the Grey Death Legion with them, like with that, because I just wanted to relive those books, and that was really fun, because I'd read the chapters and listen to an episode, then read the chapters and listen to the episode, and it felt like, you know, I wasn't just a nerd alone in my room reading BattleTech books. It felt a little bit more social.
Maybe that'll finally be the thing that gets me into reading BattleTech fiction.
They're fun. They're fun. Okay, so anyhow, Michael and I were like, okay, this is so cool. Let's read Sun Tzu, The Art of War, and talk about it. And, you know, my initial inclination of this episode was like, let's read this from the lens of what does this tell us about the man, Jamie Wolf, who has translated and annotated it. But through the process, it wasn't as clear as I thought it was going to be for a few reasons. But let's explain the format of the book to people that haven't encountered it yet. Michael, can you give a rundown of how you'd explain this book to someone?
Well, it's basically Sun Tzu's The Art of War. Many copies of that are available. This one's like 100 and some pages in a small format book, because there's not all that much to The Art of War. It's a very brief read, and then it's got a couple of like in-universe sections. So there's a foreword and an afterword written by Jamie Wolf. There's a bunch of little like inserts for commentary from Jamie Wolf on different sections, sort of in line with pieces of The Art of War. And then there are scribbled on top sections, references, struck out things, like this is sort of like a pre-owned book with additional notes and material in it. Not a huge amount, but you know, just a few extra, you know, stars and underlines on each page.
And here is something is interesting. So why my mood has been soured through this experience was because I think I came in with a false assumption. So I think the general assumption of the community, from what I've heard, except, it's funny, when I was reading this, I checked with Denim from the Mech Bay podcast. I messaged him. I'm like, hey man, I have a fan theory about this book, and like regarding the handwritten annotations. And I'm like, I think this wasn't written by Jamie Wolf. And he was like, yeah, they totally weren't written by Jamie Wolf. And I'm like, what? Everyone thinks they were written by Jamie Wolf. And so I think that
maybe we're just idiots.
Yes, or maybe we're wrong. But from my consensus, people generally think, not from my consensus, how can I have a consensus? From what I've heard, from my personal consensus of myself, What a stupid statement. From my consensus,
experience of other people's beliefs.
Yeah, from what I've heard, people have thought that was Jamie Wolf. I've seen some other conversations people have been having about this, and they thought that those handwritten notes were as well him. But today, I'm going to make arguments for why it is not and why it is actually insane to think that that is. And if it was him, it's him after he's had some severe head trauma and is now a broken man. But it's actually, what's interesting is it's actually been communicated and marketed two ways differently, this book too. So for example, on Catalyst page, the description of this book is Sun Tzu's classic text on military organization, tactics, and warfare, translated in annotations by legendary commander Jamie Wolf of Wolf's Dragoons. That is from Catalyst's official page, and that description is on many different sites. But then other sites add the following. So they say, with additional formal annotations and commentary, and then they add, from the end of the FedCom Civil War era, along with last-minute handwritten amendments immediately prior to Wolf's death.
Interesting.
Exactly.
I'd never heard that copy before. That's an interesting interpretation, and that feels kind of to me like someone who just like skimmed this.
Exactly. And so, I mean, who knows? But I will say that other written is actually on other storefronts. It is also on Sarna and other sites. So it's like literally, it's about maybe 60% from what I found was the Catalyst simple blurb. And other sites, like, you know, if you look on, found listings on eBay that said the same thing and et cetera. So it's really like two ways to describe it. One, which is literally insinuating or pretty much stating that Jamie Wolf also did these handwritten amendments as well.
I guess he was about to like mail off his last copy to the publisher for
like, yeah, before I die, take my notes and make this better. Yeah.
Add a semicolon here.
Okay. So yeah, anyhow, just keep that in mind because I think that like that description really would frame your interpretation of this book when you're reading it. And it did definitely with me because I was reading it thinking that these handwritten annotations were by Jamie Wolf as well. And it really threw me off because there are many reasons. There are many reasons why. There are many reasons.
And maybe my experience was quite different because I didn't know any of that. So when I was reading this, I just assumed it was someone else, and I spent some chunk of time trying to work out like who it was, which was a bit of a fool's errand on account of the fact that I don't know the lore all that well, and I don't know anyone. So, you know, it wasn't a very good mystery for me, but I do think we've got it figured out.
Yes, we have a fan theory for you.
I think it's a pretty obvious fan theory. I thought it was given away at the end, but yeah.
So let's talk about the order of operations that this book was produced. The first stage was obviously Sun Tzu writing the book. And then Jamie Wolf came, he translated it, and he added content sections. And then he came back again, he added additional content sections, and he wrote an introduction and a closing, right? So at least we can, based on the process that's been communicated in the book, we can at least say that this is the third version before the handwritten notes. And so if it's the fourth version, you say, if you think it's Jamie Wolf, then he returned again after publishing this third version and decide to make notes on top of this, or including notes on his foreword. So it's not even notes in the book, like he put notes on his foreword as well. Or it's someone else who had this third edition of the book in their hand and is reading it and putting notes through it throughout, which I think is the more sensible conclusion.
Yeah. To me, this is some owner of this, and you know, you see this in some books. Star Wars had a bunch of them that, you know, were supposedly in-universe books, which then had in-universe notes added by later owners of the book. Usually, though, in cases I've seen, they'll usually like say who that is. So you can be like, oh yeah, cool, it's got notes from Count Dooku in here. But this one doesn't. Maybe until the last page. But yeah.
So can I tell you where the first hint where I start this, where I'm like, this has to be a different person?
Okay.
There's this moment where there's this, you know, so how the format works is, you know, Sun Tzu will have his the standard translate Art of War text will be there. So Sun Tzu's writing translated. Then Jamie Wolf will have like a little body of text adding commentary beneath that has like been typed in. And then there will as well be those handwritten annotations on top of this. So there's one where basically it had Sun Tzu's note, then it had Jamie Wolf quoting Frost. It says like, I took the road less traveled by and that has made all the difference. And then a note about being a military man. And then the person in the notes wrote, me too. And this threw me off so much because I was like, me too?
You're just imagining Jamie Wolf is maybe the annotations were from Jamie Wolf when he's like in the cockpit, like dying.
Me too. I was a warrior. It's like he just wrote this thing that literally insinuates that showcases he had a different path, that context is about like this is being about him and this is relevant to him. That's why he's adding this sort of additional annotation there. And then to further think that Jamie Wolf is going to come in and be like, me too, to further, it like made no sense. I'm like, this has to be a different
Frost
person.
Was a true warrior poet. And so am I.
I know.
Jamie Wolf.
Me too.
Me too.
It just made no sense. And then
so is that the point where you were like, I'm not reading this book anymore. This is dumb.
Yeah, that's where I got very frustrated. And I was like, what the? And then I started looking through all the side note annotations. Like, okay, does anything in the side note annotations actually reference anything in Jamie Wolf's specific life? Because sometimes, like the block text annotations that are in there, not the handwritten annotations, the block text ones do reference stuff like Natasha Kerensky and stuff that he has actually experienced. Whereas all these little scribbles don't reference anything specifically in his life. So I'm like, okay, wait a minute. This is strange. And then I started thinking of it like, okay, well, the writing style is very different. The sentence structure is different. He even like corrects grammar and changes punctuation and adds additional content. He goes as far as to like cross out words of Sun Tzu, which is like, that's one thing that Jamie Wolf was honoring. He like gave the translation accurately and then his commentaries very separately. It's not the type of person to go through and like deface Sun Tzu's work. You know what I mean?
And there's even like parts where the Jamie Wolf annotations will like talk about how, you know, this section has been translated differently by different people, or, you know, like, you know, this translation's a little bit like poetic, but, you know, I think it fits here. There's almost always something in that, like quite frequently, Jamie Wolf talks about the actual like translation and, you know, acknowledges the fact that this isn't the original text anymore. So yeah, to then have just like randomly scribbling out words and being like, oh, I don't like the word ground. I think, what was it? Terrain.
Yeah.
What did he replace ground with?
That was funny.
Territory.
He's and like, then
ground. What's ground? When he's talking about the varieties of ground, what does he mean? Oh, it's territory, obviously.
And the best part is he crosses out there, and then the next paragraph goes and he uses the exact same terminology, and then you realize straight away that crossing out that word makes no sense. And he just leaves the rest in. He's like, oh yeah, we got to change the whole thing. He should have gone back and be like, actually, this word had meaning. Like, it really showcased, it was like someone reading the book for the first time, right? The hand scribble notes is like, I haven't read The Art of War before, and I'm just writing things that, you know, mean something to me. I think it just doesn't make sense for someone who is now would technically be on his fourth read of this thing, because he probably, Jamie Wolf, you can assume, read the book multiple times before he decided to do his like translation, add his annotations. So it wouldn't make sense for someone that had read the book that many times to put comments and notes like this in my opinion.
Yeah. No, the impression I sort of got going through this is this was a student. To me, this like read as like, you know, someone had like assigned readings or something in their you know, command class, and they were, you know, they're just going through here, markup, and, you know, being a little bit punchy now and then, you know, PR makes perfect, but doesn't like really like grasp the text as much, like isn't, you know, engaging in any sort of deep way. It's very like superficial all the handwritten notes.
A very different lived experience. I think it's still clear this person is a military man, has military experience, but not to the degree of Jamie Wolf. Like just different upbringing and all that stuff. Well, it's funny, I initially thought this might be a slightly controversial point, but you were on the right page right from the beginning, and only I have been left with this feeling of distaste in my mouth. So before I get into who I think it is and point in that direction, this is the first time I've read The Art of War. But it's not the first time for you, right?
Yeah, I've read it distantly in the past.
You're like Jamie Wolf.
Yeah, I'm basically Jamie Wolf.
Mm-hmm.
Here and on the tabletop. That's why I always get dragged into insane schemes with you.
I'm the student making the notes. It's me. Okay. Well, honestly, what are your impressions of The Art of War in general? Like the stuff that Sun Tzu is saying? And let's take the handwritten annotations out. Let's just look at this from the perspective of what our interpretations are of Sun Tzu's stuff, and the stuff that we're saying is Jamie Wolf that we're not questioning.
Well, so maybe starting from the Sun Tzu stuff. Sun Tzu is one of those things where I feel like there really isn't anything useful for me to say. Like, it's such a famous text. It's been around for a really long time. People have talked about it a lot. I have literally nothing I can say that is a meaningful like set of words to share about it. It's obviously like some very general, broadly good advice for leaders and warriors, or like leaders and commanders, and it's written a long time ago and is fascinating because it does still seem to hold some relevance in the modern world and in fields outside of like direct military engagements. But what I think is sort of fun, going into the other half of your question, talking about like the Jamie Wolf stuff, is I think the Jamie Wolf stuff is actually like sort of fun to read about, and a lot of it makes it a bit more like digestible. It's maybe a little bit like childish, but it's a bit like a picture book for reading The Art of War, where you're reading like, sometimes poetic, sometimes like really distant and a little bit tricky to understand concepts. And then it's got something, then just dips in and it's like, hey, this is just like the Battle of so-and-so with something. Or, like in the, well, he's talking about chariots, but, battle mechs are kind of the same. So it makes it like more palatable than just sitting here and like reading a bunch of really old words and trying to digest them. Because, it joins it into a game that's sort of fun and stuff. How about you? So you haven't read it, and did you get through the whole thing this time, or did you leave it at mostly focusing on the annotations part?
Yeah, so basically I got it's a short book too. I don't really have an excuse, to be honest. I got over halfway through it. And then once I got halfway through it and like the annotation thing started clicking, I was more focused on annotations. I read all of Jamie Wolf's stuff. To be honest, I found like the Sun Tzu stuff like very obvious stuff, in my opinion. And I feel like this was written to like really in the era where you'd have generals that were like class-based generals, you know what I mean? Where like I'm nobility, so I am in control of these lower ranked people. And almost that sense of arrogance that came along with that, this book would really combat that. This would be like, listen, dude, don't be an idiot, fight smart. And this is how you can be smart. These are the things you need to think about.
Yeah, I think that's a fairly common sentiment these days, is that it is like baby's first how to war.
Exactly. But it's not a bad book. Like, let's say you were making a war plan. You're like, okay, I've already thought about all these things, but I'm going to flip to a random page in this book just to like spot check if this is something I've thought. Like if you're making some sort of battle plan, you could use this to like force yourself to take different perspectives. But fundamentally, it's not the knowledge in here that's challenging. It's the practice of applying it and like the willpower and zeal to actually not get overtaken by, I think, your arrogance and ego and your wanton desires in the battlefield or on the BattleTech table. But that being said, your points regarding Jamie Wolf, I agree with. Like I liked I liked how he digested it. I liked how he made it more real. And Jamie Wolf to me came across as a very practical and reflective military man. Like very little ego, in my opinion, in his writing. And in the same way, honoring Sun Tzu's writing while sort of questioning some things without being disrespectful. Like he's a very grounded person, is what I took out of Jamie Wolf's notes.
Yeah, I will say on your thing about the Art of War, how you only made it halfway through. The first half is definitely the better half. The second half definitely kind of drags and gets a little bit circular, which is something I found interesting because Jamie Wolf actually calls that out a bit, where like, you know, he's like, oh, you know, maybe some of these were added later. You know, some of these are like later interpretations and reinterpretations that were tacked on to the text. I have no idea if that's a real, genuine historical position, but it was sort of, you know, interesting to see talked about the like historicity of the text. The other thing I will say about it is Sun Tzu may have started the multiple millennia spanning tradition of numbered lists.
Ah.
Sun Tzu loved friggin' numbered lists. When you're talking about like ego, I'm like, yes, ego, one of the 6 flaws of a commander that can lead to ruin.
Yeah, actually, the numbered lists, I sort of like that. I find that, you know, okay, so you go to strategies 3-4. Okay, never besiege wall cities if it can be possible to be avoided. Okay, great, cool, thanks, dude. I think it's easy to like, you can really imagine someone who really studied this and just going and critiquing a general, like even like an academic. He's like, excuse me, general, but have you considered Sun Tzu's Tactics 4.38 in your plan? Ooh, get this guy out of the room. Yeah. But I find that to be a nice little practice for finding stuff. But you're right. Like, as Jamie Wolf said, it starts pulling on other previous chapters. It's like referencing stuff. And it does, I'm glad that you're saying that it does feel drawn out, because that's what it felt like to me. At the end, I'm like, okay, we're just saying the same thing with just a slightly different angle. But I mean, who am I to critique Sun Tzu? Let's just be honest, guys. I don't know if I have the grounds to critique Sun Tzu. I'm just a dude.
I think you mean the territory.
The territory, yeah. I'm not in the territory. Great respect to Sun Tzu, okay? Great respect. I have no disrespect for this dude. But who do I have disrespect for, Michael? Whoever was writing these damn handwritten annotations in these books. That's who I feel disdain towards. And let's talk about
First
who
of
we
all,
think it is.
I'm hard against writing in books in general. That's just a personal thing of mine. I don't write in books. I don't like people writing in books. Books are sacred, but you know, that's just me. I recognize that I'm probably an outlier in that. But already this person's on shaky ground. They should have written it in a notepad next to the book instead.
Yeah, like stickies. Come on, bro, put some stickies. That would have been funny too. They're like big stickies, just like blocking out half the page. With like notes like, he should consider using a semicolon more often here, or something silly like that. So, you know, it's a question I have now thinking about this. Okay, so if this book was something that was then translated and published and released in the universe, okay, it's one thing if this is like something purchasable in the universe that someone could find and like, oh, this is mass produced, and then I could write my notes on it. It cost me like 20 C-bills. That's different than this is the actual thing, the one single copy made by Jamie Wolf.
No, this has to be a sold. No one writes a forward if you're not selling it. Like this has to be a product. They're shipping these things out to military academies across the sphere, and that's where some snot-nosed brat got assigned this book. You know, their dad bought it for them, and it's like, you got to study this.
You want to be a MechWarrior?
You ought to be a mech commander. You need to study Sun Tzu. Sun Tzu knew a thing or two about warfare.
The things he says about chariots will change your life, man. Okay, so yeah, it doesn't. There's nothing here that
So
really
I don't
says
think
that.
I don't think I should come out and give my guess who it is, because
I'll say it.
I really only have one piece of evidence and it's on the last page. So I think your investigative understanding is probably more fun, if unnecessary, perhaps.
I think it's Adam Steiner. I think Adam Steiner got a copy of this book and decided to put these notes in here. And there's arguments that you can easily make against this, but I'll tell you why I think it is. And the reason I think it is there's a note in there, an annotation that Jamie Wolf wrote in there that literally says, "I can feel Adam Steiner's eyes upon me." He literally writes that in there. And the scribble comments on it, "No, I won't say it." Almost like, he could be thinking like, "Yes, they are," or something like that, or like, "He saw through me," or like, "How did he see this coming?" You know what I mean? Sort of like an acknowledgement that Adam Steiner, or acknowledgement that like he was referenced in this book. I don't know. At the end of the book, he also says, he gives his famous line, "Information is ammunition. Damn it, I could not help myself." He writes down his own famous line at the end of the book.
Which is like, even if you were like, even if this is your book, like that is an absolutely like unhinged thing to do, right?
It is, but you know what's interesting about this? When he does that, he also puts it in quotes, right? Which alludes to him quoting Adam Steiner, not him being Adam Steiner. So there are arguments you can say out of the way, but I sort of feel like because of all the arrogantness of the other notes that this is Adam Steiner.
Well, and like if you couldn't help yourself, that's because it's like, if you're saying that, that's because you're saying like, oh yeah, I'm always saying this. And Adam Steiner is literally the only person in the universe that is famous for saying that, right? Like,
yes,
that's his catchphrase.
That's his catchphrase, yeah. He does as well say, there's this note in there where Jamie Wolf says, regarding Word of Blake, "If they ever get past this and focus their anger, watch out." He's sort of speaking down about Word of Blake here. And there is a note in here, "Revisit this example." And it is true that Jamie Wolf has a negative encounter with Word of Blake where they sort of, they lead to his death, really. But
I had a somewhat negative encounter with the Word of Blake. A few people have reported having less than friendly interactions with the Word of Blake. And
Jamie Wolf was one of them, yeah. So, that being said, for one of these notes, it does say, the argument, the person who's handwriting says, "Revisit this example." And I would argue that at the time with what Wolf was going through, during when he started having the really negative encounters with Word of Blake, in which he would thought they would be a force to be perhaps reckoned with, he wouldn't have had time to go back into this book and write these annotations on top. So instead, I think this is Adam Steiner saying, "Revisit this example," to try to learn from the example that led to Wolf's death, because Wolf's death is directly correlated with the Word of Blake intervention. So that note is basically like, okay, well, this is something like Adam Steiner has a lot of encounters with Word of Blake. It's something that he ends up struggling with. So this, I think, is like a note for him, like, hey, we got to look at this. We got to learn from the past. Mm-hmm. So I think those are three examples that really connect to it. Also, the author is clearly is formally educated, for sure. They also come across more like an academic. And we know Adam Steiner, he has that nobility blood in him. So to me, it just feels like it's a good fit for all those reasons, those three elements, and the top of the nature of how it's written. Like the punctuation and the wordsmithing that he does, that's the type of stuff that someone who is sort of has lots of formal education does, but doesn't really, I don't know. It's a little bit disattached from, it's like the difference between academia and applying something in the field. Like this is someone who has that academic background. I know Adam Steiner did apply lots of things in the field. Don't get me wrong. He is like a seasoned, intelligent general. But I think that this showcases that he does have that foundational academic sort of upbringing. that is something that Jamie Wolf clearly did not.
Yeah, and so I agree on all points for that on the sort of like military front. On the historian front, there's also a very different treatment of the text, and we sort of talked about this already, but like Jamie Wolf is generally like quite respectful of the text, has a relatively like genuine translation here, and discusses sort of the challenges of translating it and interpreting after all this time, whereas the handwritten is much more like just willing to cross out whole sections. Towards the end of the book, Sun Tzu is giving like specific numbers to things, how many ounces of silver it costs to keep 1,000 men armed and ready in an army, and that's been translated by Jamie Wolf because it's what's in the original text, and it takes some amount of interpretation to bridge that historical gap. Whereas the person annotating is just crosses it out as like, how many ounces of silver? Who cares about that? I don't get paid in silver. How many ounces of silver in a sea bill? And like, I don't know, just like crossing out lines from the text. Like maybe you're studying for your exams and you're like, I just don't want to see those words right now. But like when you're reading a historical text, you don't just like cross out words and be like, it doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah. I think that from like my interpretation, like the book with these hints, it sort of hints at it being Adam Steiner. You can't really say for sure. Maybe it could be someone who knew Adam Steiner or someone who's been influenced by Adam Steiner, like, because information is ammunition, is a pretty common saying in the universe. Like people would know that. But to me, I think that the logical conclusion is it's Adam Steiner. And because he even worked with Clan Wolf, interactions with them, and he lived longer than Jamie Wolf. And he's also, someone who is of a strategic mind. So he'd be the type of person that would want to read something like this. I just think everything really points in that direction.
All right, I've got an even better fan theory here.
Shoot.
So,
how dare
in
you
his
first.
last battle, Jamie Wolf is dying in the cockpit of his mech, and he pulls out his personal copy of his own annotated book, The Art of War, which he carries with him every day, presumably. He begins hastily making some marks in the margins, hoping that someone will correct these blatant issues. He gets the part about like being a military man and then agreeing with himself because he's delirious from the blood loss, and finally he dies.
And see, that is possible, but if that's the case, that was a long death.
And then Adam Steiner pries the book from his cold, dead hands and sees the unfinished work of Jamie Wolf and is like, I cannot let Jamie Wolf's legacy be, incomplete. And he secretly ghost writes a bunch of these modifications at the end. That's why towards the end, they start to get even worse and worse, is because Jamie's just trying to do his best, or Adam Steiner's just trying to do his best before he ships us off to the publisher for the posthumous release of the 5th edition Sun Tzu Art of War, translated and annotated by Jamie Wolf, with a new foreword by Adam Steiner.
Well, but the foreword has those notes, those call-out notes.
Right. But the next edition will have the foreword by Adam Steiner. This is just the prototype for that, with a combination of Jamie Wolf's notes and Adam Steiner pretending to be Jamie Wolf's notes.
Well, that's, it's interesting because the foreword in this book, it doesn't say forward, it says forward, bracket, from the journals of Jamie Wolf, bracket. So it's like, oh, wait a minute, this is from a journal of Jamie Wolf? So this foreword is something that, so Jamie Wolf didn't put this himself together. Because Jamie Wolf wouldn't put a forward in and say like, hey, by the way, this is from my journals of Jamie Wolf, just so you know. This foreword, this book that's written, this is from my journals, just heads up. And I'm Jamie Wolf. So clearly, this section was at, that adds another layer to this thing. Okay, so that means that all the annotations were made, but the afterword doesn't. So we don't know. I think we don't know who writes the afterword, right? The afterword could be written by Adam Steiner.
Well,
it does quote Nietzsche.
And hang on. And the afterword talks about the critiques that Colonel Wayne Waco had of my annotated translation.
Okay, never mind.
So that it's gotta be by the author.
It's Jamie Wolf. Yeah, never mind.
Unless it was Adam Steiner pretending to be Jamie Wolf.
Listen, all I know is, in conclusion, I think this book is a fun read, but don't do what I did. Don't read it from the perspective that Jamie Wolf is also doing the handwritten notes, because that makes it unbearable, because the written voice is inconsistent. There's so many things, and it just makes Jamie seem like flaky and sporadic. And it makes the rest of the interpretations lose value. It's like, oh yeah, this is a really wise paragraph annotation here. And then, all of a sudden there's a note that says a completely irrelevant note. Like, yeah, oh, Jamie Wolf read this great thing about, the history of Vlad. And then, oh, no one ever said war was easy. It's generic, like Jamie Wolf, what the hell, man? Are you really bleeding out in your cockpit like Michael's theory? And if he was bleeding out, he was bleeding out for so long. I know you say that Adam Steiner fixed the end, but how far did he get in before he bled out in your theory? Did you just get 3-4 pages in and then he bled out? And then Adam Steiner's like, well, it's a great idea. Let's finish it off. And he resisted all the way to the very end to say information is ammunition. I wait all the way to the end to give my famous quote. I don't know.
Okay, I've got one more question around this book.
Okay.
So one of the things that I think works well for this is, we talked about this before, BattleTech is sort of set in this space feudalism universe, and so there's quite a few things that are not particularly relevant in today's day and age, but actually kind of work when you transpose Sun Tzu into space. But almost all the discussion is around the politics of the inner sphere. It's around the great houses and their feudal conflicts. Why does Jamie spend so little on clan politics? Because he would be familiar with clan politics, right? And then by the time of the writing of this, the clans are known, the big clan wars have happened, the word of Blake has appeared. Why does he not spend any ink on clan politics and affairs?
To me, that's consistent because we know Jamie Wolf was an adamant warden, right, in the clan. So basically, he was so focused on the protection of the inner sphere and the belief, that the clans would come back and they would protect the inner sphere from falling into chaos and all that stuff, that his focus, his perspective would really be on how can we fix the inner sphere? That's what matters. Honestly, I think that the clans probably to Jamie Wolf were a means to the end of returning the glory of the inner sphere, the Star League, all that fun stuff. So that would be my interpretation. Okay. But it could also be friggin' Adam Steiner once again, because
he
information is ammunition
about the clans,
and he is friggin' information is ammunition. So he's feeding people bad ammunition with this. God.
Yeah, that's why he's making the annotations. That's why he's striking out the bits about how many ounces of silver.
Exactly, because we know that silver, C-bill stands for silver bills, right? Silver exactly. with a C.
Silver.
Damn, okay, well, that's the book. I think that's all I have to say. So, in the end, I guess you would recommend this as a read to someone? If someone hadn't experienced Sun Tzu, wanted a little BattleTech fix, as a casual read.
Yeah. No one's reading The Art of War to establish groundbreaking military strategy or anything, but it's sort of it's a worthwhile read. And like I say, this gives it a bit of a picture book feel where you're never too inundated in 25 century old writings, and you can keep dipping into something fun. The time that friggin' what's his name? Jamie Wolf's younger brother kicked someone really hard. Yeah, it's fun. It's good. If you want to read The Art of War, that's not a bad way to do it.
All right, take it from Michael, not from jaded Nathan.
And well, would you recommend it?
I cannot speak to this book because I was so thrown off base at the beginning, and I do not want to read it again. I'm not going back into this book. I refuse. There's like this lesson I learned a long time ago, which was so valuable, which is if you don't like a book you're reading, stop reading the book. Because I used to read fiction, and I'd force myself to finish. I gotta finish the book. And all it did was suck the joy out of reading out of me slowly. And they're like, that's toxic. It's like the completionist mentality in video games. Gotta get all the achievements. But if you're not enjoying it, what's the point? So, no, I will not return to this book. I'm happy to have it and have all these bent pages in it now, like dog-eared pages with all these notes. It really looked like I've done some deep analysis on this thing. But really, it's just been me trying to understand what the hell was going on with these handwritten annotations. And it's all because of, a false assumption I had coming in. So I think if you came in without that false assumption, it would be a fun read.
Has this improved or harmed your opinion of Jamie Wolf in the universe?
Oh, it's definitely improved my opinion of Jamie Wolf. And whoever
has this improved or harmed?
It's harmed. It's harmed my interpretation of Adam Steiner. If this is Adam Steiner, it is harmed. I have great disdain for this man.
Adam Steiner's name is all over this.
Whoever decides to go into a historical text like Sun Tzu and cross out the words and be like, I think this would be a better word, he should have said this, or then has the audacity to go in and correct someone's punctuation when it adds no inherent value, that is a man I do not want to sit across from at the dinner table.
I learned that Adam Steiner doesn't know how semicolons work, and that has harmed my opinion of him because that's the only fact I know about Adam Steiner.
Oh boy. Well, this was fun.
Yeah, it was fun.
Let's stop ranting. On to the next segment, for the love of God.
This is Professor Michael presenting The Sphere We Live In. Despite enduring for millennia, the historicity of Sun Tzu's Art of War, as well as of the man himself, remains muddy. Traditional teachings places birth more than 2,500 years before spaceflight under the name Sun Wu. Several legendary tales of his writings and accomplishment are still taught amongst traditionalist schools. But as early as the 12th century, it has been noted that contemporary texts do not include any mention of him under several of the possible names, and some Terran archaeologists suggested that the name was meant to be evocative rather than literal, translating roughly as the fugitive warrior. Perhaps the stories of his life were meant to teach rather than to document. Bamboo writings recovered in the 20th century also supported this, with fragmented chapters of several military texts written by Sun Bin, reportedly a descendant of Sun Wu. Among these fragments were also word-for-word chapters from the modern art of war, and historians at the time suggested that the teachings of Sun Tzu might actually have been a continuously developing intellectual tradition united under the Sun name. It is unlikely for any new scholarship on the matter to resolve this, so unfortunately we will never know the true origins of the text. Whatever the identities of its authors may be, we can be certain that their enduring legacy will continue to be taught for centuries to come. Now you know about the sphere we live in.
Secondary objective, rule check discovery segment. Initiating.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to our Rule Check Discovery segment. Today is something different that we've been sort of waiting on for a while. It's not a true rule mistake. Instead, Michael and I are going to be talking about some of the pronunciation mistakes we have made.
The rules of language.
The rules of language, which, are very different depending on where you live in the world. But still, we've definitely made some, more so me, have made some horrible mispronunciations. And so let's talk about some of the mistakes we've made and sometimes the reactions that people have had to them.
Yeah, this is maybe a bit of penance.
Yeah. But at the same time, people have crazy reactions to mispronunciations. So, like, as a voice actor who literally, like, records, I don't know, let's say I record 2 hours of audio, and then you pick out 4 words that were pronounced wrong across 2 hours, that is insane. Like, let's look at the percentage of accuracy there, like 99.9999, and sometimes you say words wrong. People are just so hard on
Yeah, sometimes
narrators.
you say words wrong. It just happens, especially if you're Nathan.
It's especially if you're a human, Michael, and you're a human too. And everyone listening, unless you're a lizard person, you're a human. And even if you are a lizard person, I think that you could probably make those mistakes too.
Or other ones. Too many sibilants when you're a lizard person.
Oh yeah, that must be very hard, actually. Woo. Okay. All right. So the first mistake was in Stories of the Inner Sphere segment. I mispronounce penal colony as penile colony, and that is quite the
and
difference.
Everyone pointed and laughed at you.
Yeah, they really reacted to that one, and I didn't see that one coming. And even when people said it was wrong, I was like, "Why is that wrong? Isn't it a penile colony?" And I'm like, "Man, I've always been imagining people in prison are going to penile colonies." And I've always thought it was a very different place until now today when I was educated. So that's a pretty common mistake I've made.
Yeah. And you have a thing where once you get thrown off of your expected pronunciation, it takes you a while to get like zeroed in on the correct pronunciation. So when we were talking about this before recording, you were like wandering between like penile and like penile colony. But we've zeroed it in now. Penal colony, and you will never get it wrong again.
Oh my God. Yeah, I'm going to get it wrong in 5 minutes.
Penile colony. Penal colony.
Punel colony. All right, next one. This is a pretty common one. And it is the pronunciation of Galatea. Galatea, which is a term we commonly use, especially in our global campaign initiative, because that is where it is now being hosted, or where the campaign is taking place. We are not actually on Galatea. So Galatea would be the proper pronunciation, I believe, but we have often pronounced it as Galatea. So not Galatea, Galatea. But it ends with Tia.
This is one of those words that I've read a lot. I've even used it in some settings and stuff. But I don't actually know an authoritative pronunciation for it, and I'm not internalizing what Nathan's telling me right now, so I'm probably going to Galatea.
Just end it with Tia. Galatea.
Okay.
Galatea.
I'll try. No promises.
Anyhow, it doesn't matter either way, but I'm pretty sure that's the proper one. At least it's proper by the pronunciation guides that I've checked. And by Trent Sparks, the master pronunciation dude.
Basically the authority on pronunciation.
In the BungleTech universe, he is.
Yeah. That's what voice actors are, right? Authorities on pronunciations.
Well, if they were the case, I would not be criticized nearly as much as I am. So, all right, Michael. Next one is you. It is the town where the Kodama come from.
Not even the town, but the planet. And this is like, I'm extremely aware of this because I can specifically remember like some Professor Michael segments that I've said this wrong in. I believe the planet is called Isesaki. So it's the Isesakian Kodama. But for some reason, that combination of letters, when I look at it and I'm just reading it, it looks like Isekai. So I'm pretty sure if you go back, there's some Professor Michael segments where I talk about the planet of Isekai and the Isekai Kodama, which is a very different thing. That's a very different word.
Yeah.
Quite different.
But I it's funny, I've heard some of those pronunciations in, I think, Professor Michael segments, and I've been confused. I'm like, oh, maybe it's a town or something like that. So I don't know. Like, I just trust you. You're the man. So that has now been, we've spread that. Not that it matters.
Misinformation, yeah.
Not that
it's not like
no
crazy
one's talking
that
about this planet.
It's not that it's crazy that there could be a planet called Isekai. I just don't think there is.
Maybe there's a town on Isesaki called Isekai.
That would be, that would be a choice. Yeah.
Okay, the next one, this is the word that whenever I've mispronounced, this rages people, and I don't know why. But I learn whenever I see someone comment about this word and it enraging them, I learn a lot about you as a person. So just know that. Just know that. This is like, this is one of those
you thought
trigger
you were
words.
judging Nathan? Nathan's judging
I'm
you.
judging you. So I'll say it the way that you're going to hate, which is chassis. A chassis, like the thing that's in a vehicle, a chassis. It's a vehicle chassis, it's a mech chassis. That you don't like the word chassis? That's the mispronunciation. Okay, it's a chassis. The thing in your mech, the mech thing that keeps you balanced, the chassis, not the chassis, the chassis.
It's kind of interesting because each of those has half of the correct pronunciation.
That's funny. And then the correct one is chassis, right? Chassis.
The chassis.
The chassis.
British
It's the
there.
chassis of the vehicle. So chassis is how you say
my
it.
mech's chassis was heavily damaged.
It's funny. Chassis is, to me, this is a word that unless you've encountered this is not a normal word that most people would encounter in their life unless you're in like a mechanical field or something like that. And so to me, you wouldn't intuitively know how to say that. And so it's to me, I think this is a very common mispronunciation. As you see it all the time. In many different settings, I see people even how they react to it in person just fires people up. Chassis was, I know, a mispronunciation I made after I learned that the proper pronunciation was chassis. And I think I said it in the concept of chassis rather than chassis. In plural, I said chassis.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why I went that way, but it happens. And people don't you know? And I'm like, oh, thanks for pointing that out, bro.
Appreciate
there you go.
it.
That's a mistake.
I think this has got to be like this word is almost certainly derived from French, right? I can't say why, but it feels French to me.
It feels French. It feels French to me too.
Is it from like chaise? Like a
chaise, it's chaise. On très bien. Is it in the chaise?
Oui. I've taken damage
chaise. I've taken damage to my chaise. I have nowhere to sit. Listen, I'm really riled up about the Art of War conversation still, okay? I'm just riled up. All right, next one. This is a mistake we made earlier on. We both made this mistake, I think, Michael. This is regarding the Waco Rangers. How have we mispronounced Waco Rangers?
Yeah, I'm almost certain I know how to pronounce Waco, as in the town in Texas, where some things happened once. But I definitely remember someone on Discord dragging me once for saying it wacko. But did I really say that? I know you say that, but did I really say that?
Wacko Rangers. And here's the funny thing in the lore, right? Like the Wolf's Dragoons call the Waco Rangers Wacko Rangers. They literally slander them by calling them wacko. And so that's how I found out there was a mispronunciation error on this, because I was always calling them Wacko Rangers. And then I found out like the Wolf's Dragoons, like there's a note like, oh, the Wolf's Dragoons call them the Wacko Rangers out of disdain. And I'm like, wait, that's their name. How's that disdainful? That's very respectful, actually. It's like
the Rangers can hear the H in there.
Anyhow, sort of funny. So that's one. That's an interesting one. I think it makes sense to call this Wacko, to be honest. Like, if you didn't know the name of the city or the town, it reads like Wacko in my opinion, but Waco is the way it is to be pronounced. Next one is probably a common one that we'll experience in the table. Gauss rifle. Is it a Gauss rifle or is it a Gauss rifle?
Or a Gauss,
or a Gauss rifle.
At least one pronunciation guide said it rhymes with
or
house.
Gauss rifle.
I don't know why I've been convinced since I was a child that Gauss is pronounced Gauss.
Gauss, yeah.
But at some point I was taught that, and I've been saying Carl Gauss ever since. So I don't know. I learned wrong. Sue me.
And I think, the proper pronunciation is Gauss rifle, not Gauss rifle. Gauss rifle. Or maybe it's interchangeable. This one I'm not too sure of, but I definitely know I've done both. And this is a word that would be used at the table a lot, right? I'm shooting you with my Gauss rifle. Excuse me? It's Gauss rifle, not Gauss rifle. It's Gauss. It's so different. Can't you hear? Not Gauss. Even when I say it to myself in word after word, I'm like, what? It sounds the same thing to me. I don't know. Anyhow, it's pretty close, but yeah, one's Gauss. Oh wait, no, not Gauss. I'm just confused. Gauss rifle.
Put some respect on his name.
Yes. Gauss rifle. Like Gauss rifle.
Like
not
house.
Gauss
House
rifle. Not like Gauss. Not like Gauss you're wrapping your arms in.
Gauss rifle.
Like Gauss rifle. And I think that On the Origins calls this the Goose rifle. That's their term. Goose rifle, which I guess simplifies everything. It's no longer a question, just called the Goose rifle, and it probably solves everyone's problems.
Next I know some people around these parts that have goose rifles.
Rakshasa. And the only way I know this is pronounced differently is because I recently did actually, you're going to be trusting me on this, but I did the Sarna Bad Necks article on this mech, and I had to look up a pronunciation guide from this, and the conclusion was Rakshasa. So not Rakshasa, but Rakshasa, instead of Rakshasa, which sounds so much fancier. Rakshasa, it's the Rakshasa mech.
Are you sure you're not just putting on an English accent there?
Let's slow it down. Incorrect. Rakshasa. Correct. Rakshasa. Very close.
You can skip ahead, listener. Just go forward 5 minutes. You'll still be listening to Rakshasa.
All right, next one is a weird one. This is just totally me, and I lived my life with this mispronunciation for the longest time. I used to think turrets were called turrents, like an N. So I used to think they were spelled Turrent, turrent, instead of turret. And I pronounced it, oh, we got to install turrets, we need base turrets, for years. I'm not even joking. Till I was 30, I pronounced it turret. And then someone eventually showed me how a turret was spelled. And I'm like, why is it spelled that way? Isn't this a turret? And it's like, oh, that's no such word. So
this is something that you were probably 11 years old, and you were reading in a hurry, and you were like, oh yeah, turrets. And then for the rest of your life, every time you saw that combination of letters, you're like, turret, obviously.
Yeah.
And you didn't have any reason to talk about turrets with your friends.
Exactly. I never did. And no one questioned me. I don't know. But it sounds quite distinctly different, right? Turret. I think you should hear, if I kept on saying turret, you think someone would be slap me. Shh. What did you just say, chassis?
Well, yeah, but maybe the problem is you weren't saying words on the internet for people to listen to, because
yes.
If I was playing a game with you and the turret hit you in the chassis, I'd be like, okay, whatever.
That's true.
But now you're exist on the internet, and people will scream at you for turrets.
They will.
Yeah.
Next are the names of some prominent houses and clans.
These ones I'm admittedly unclear on.
Yeah, and I know I change back and forth, and so I think Michael and I are similar in this regard. But there's Capellan Confederation or Capellan Confederation. So is it Capellan or Capellan? I think it's Capellan, not Capellan. So I call them Capellan Confederation, but I hear people just call them Capellans rather than Capellan. So close, but different pronunciation. I'm pretty sure it is Capellan. Another common one, Liao or Lao. Is it Liao? Is it Lao? This would actually probably be easy just to determine a standard pronunciation of, because this is a standard sort of common name, I think. But it's pronounced both ways, Liao, Lao.
Yeah, admittedly, whenever that comes up in one of the Professor Michael segments, I'm like, I don't know. How do I say this?
I don't know what I say anymore. All right, I'm going to how to pronounce most of this stuff live.
We're getting serious on air.
Liao.
But it's definitely two syllables. Liao.
Oh my God, these are so bad. howtopronounce.com is like a really bad source for pronunciations, just so you know.
But it's always there at the top of the list,
Yeah.
giving you bad answers.
I don't know. Anyhow, it's something there. And let's just like someone comment in our
Yeah,
you know what we should do actually?
Go argue with other people in the comments about Lao versus Liao.
So the next one is another common one, Lyran or Liran. The Lyran Commonwealth or the Liran Commonwealth. I say Liran Commonwealth. Some people say Lyran Commonwealth. I think it's Liran. You know,
I would say Liran, but I also wouldn't like fight you if you said Lyran, which is why I would never survive on the internet.
You are on the internet, Michael. And somehow you are surviving.
Oh, no, you didn't tell me that.
Yeah, this gets published on the internet.
I thought we were just hanging out and chatting like we do once a month.
No, this is, you think, and the imaginary third person we're talking to all the time is just your imaginary friend?
You told me you had one person who liked to hang out and listen, but also not be named. They just wanted to be called listener.
Dude, you're a very patient friend. Thank you for putting up with all my weird things. So compassionate. And the last one, of course, is Clan Wolf is actually the mispronunciation. The real way to pronounce it is Clan Wolf. So Clan Wolf, incorrect. Clan Wolf. You got to go woof, woof, woof. Yeah. So hopefully that's obvious enough for you.
They're very strongly, they feel strong affinity to their clan's animal namesake.
Anyone who plays that clan, if you see them at the table, make sure to correct them. If they say, yeah, I'm playing Clan Wolf, be like, no, it's actually pronounced woof. And then if they say wolf, just keep on going woof, 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 like that at them.
And then kicked out for BM.
That's sometimes you just gotta stand your ground, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Just like if someone was talking about a chasey.
So this is what I want you guys to do. Listener, individual who's sitting in my space right now, who I'm talking to, please comment in the episode and let us know, honestly, or go on Discord, whatever. I want to know what things you commonly mispronounce, what things you struggle with, weird things you've heard that are true mispronunciations, not just like preferences, like sometimes people call like LRMs lerms. I'm using my lerms on you. Like that is just a different way, I think, to just a weird, like, maybe it isn't. Actually,
lerms,
no. Don't let me censor you. Say whatever you want to say. Just say things that you think you've mispronounced or other people mispronounced. I'm just curious because, English is hard. And, Michael and I are Canadian. So we say things differently than the majority of our audience, which is American. For example, we say about. Hear that T? About. It's about time. We say sorry instead of sorry. We say again instead of again. Many different words we pronounce differently. And then, we have our British fellows, our Australian fellows, everybody across the globe. We all say things differently. And somehow we have not killed each other yet. Miraculous.
Nathan, stop trying to foment the friendship and understanding. I thought the point of inviting people to the comments was because we can farm engagement by people fighting over the correct pronunciation of things.
No, let's just accept we're all right and we're all wrong. And the only thing that we should come out of this episode with disdain towards is whoever was writing these handwritten notes in The Art of War. That's where we should target our disdain, people who had the audacity to sully. Yes, shake your fists. I'm going to remove his card from my Steiner deck in the BattleTech PCG. That's how much disdain I feel from him. That's a good damn card. Get them out of there, Adam Steiner. How dare you do this to Sun Tzu?
Once again, we're rambling about how much Nathan hates Adam Steiner.
Not before this episode. Not before I read this book. All right. Well, with that information, which is not ammunition, because information should empower us not to hurt people, but to love each other. That's right, Adam Steiner, you're sick. I think that's the end of this segment. Let's get on to the next segment. Michael, end us with something cool. Shoo.
Information is ammunition. No!
No!
This is Professor Michael presenting The Sphere We Live In. Toxoplasmosis gondii is notable among the already diverse class of parasitic microorganisms for the behavioral changes it induces in its hosts. While capable of infecting most endotherms with hemoglobin-based blood, it is only known to be capable of sexual reproduction in members of the family of cats, Felidae, or their derived organisms, the Parafelidae. This is facilitated by causing alterations to the behaviors of rodents through epigenetic changes in neural tissue, making the rodents more likely to be predated by the felids. Toxoplasmosis gondii infections are common but usually asymptomatic among human populations, with some planets exhibiting greater than 60% infection rates with few notable side effects. In a recent paper in the Luxon Journal of Medicine, researchers identified a patient suffering from an infection of the subspecies Toxoplasmosis gondii hardcorea, which is noted for a much higher rate of complications. In this identified patient, the parasite not only severely affected the nervous system, inducing paranoid schizophrenia, but also the endocrine system, causing a massive shutdown of the patient's system, which in turn caused rapid decline in the health of all other tissues and an apparent rapid aging as skin and muscles collapsed. The authors even posit that a Toxoplasmosis gondii hardcorea infection may have been responsible for the rapid decline of the elder statesman of the Capellan Confederation, Sun Tzu Lao, although confirmation remains impossible until his body can be recovered. Now you know about the sphere we live in.
Tertiary objective. Stories of the Inner Sphere segment. Initiating.
Audio log. Begin recording. Jamie Wolfe, Sun Tzu, The Art of War, Chapter 2, with annotations. Planning. 1. Sun Tzu said, the art of war is of vital importance to the state. 2. It is a matter of life and death, a road to safety or ruin. It is a subject which cannot be neglected. This is especially true for the commander of a mercenary force. For 400 years, the great houses of the inner spheres have charted the paths into purgatory. The clans followed a similar map and built new homes with a view. Mercenary commands do not have the luxury of sovereign's love, nor the support of a militant culture. We are businesses, small and large, built at the sufferance and on the suffering of others, padding the statistics of war in exchange for a tiny percentage of a nation's bottom line. Economics 101. Anything can be outsourced. 3. The art of war is governed by 5 constant factors. 4. These are 1. The moral law. 2. Heaven. 3. Earth. 4. Command. 5. Method and discipline. 5. The moral law causes people to be in complete accord with their ruler. Sun Tzu envisions states battling other states. Mercenaries are rarely in perfect accord with those who hire them. My experience in service to House Kurita, and the existence of the company store tactic in general, reminds me that outright antagonism is a distinct possibility. Still, it is worth gauging the popularity of any war with the people on whom the cost will fall. Unpopular wars raise a lot of anger, and mercenaries are such convenient targets. 6. They follow him regardless of their lives, ignoring most dangers. 7. Heaven signifies night and day, cold and heat, times and seasons. 8. Earth comprises distance great and small, danger and security, open ground and narrow passes, the chances of life and death. 9. Command stands for the virtues of wisdom, sincerity, humanity, courage, and self-control. 10. Method and discipline are the marshalling of the army in its proper subdivisions, the organization of rank among the officers, the maintenance of roads by which supplies may reach the army, and the control of military expenditure. 11. These 5 factors should be familiar to every commander. He who knows them will be victorious. He who doesn't will fail. A proper table of organization and equipment, steady supply lines, and a strong economy. Don't go to war without a well-organized, well-fed, well-paid army. Check. Was common soldiery so undervalued in Sun Tzu's age? Or every age? 12. Therefore, when seeking to determine military conditions, ask the following questions. 1. Which of the 2 sovereigns is in harmony with his subjects? 2. Which of the 2 commanders is more secure in their ability? 3. Which position derives more advantages from heaven and earth? 4. On which side is discipline rigorously enforced? 5. Which army is the stronger? 6. On which side are officers and men more highly trained? 7. In which army are merits significantly rewarded and misdeeds appropriately punished? 13. By means of these 7 considerations, I can gauge victory or defeat. Napoleon Bonaparte famously declared, "The moral is to the physical as 3 is to 1. George Washington wrote, "Discipline is the soul of the army." Richard Amaris believed, "Fealty to the throne is the ultimate high ground." All have a point, but give me Zeta dropping into the backfield any day. Esprit de corps matters, though never as much as bullets. 14. A commander who listens to this advice and acts upon it will conquer, retain such military leaders in command. A commander who ignores this advice will suffer defeat. This commander must be dismissed. 15. While heeding this advice, also take advantage of helpful circumstances over and beyond the ordinary rules. 16. Always be ready to modify one's plans. No plan survives contact with the enemy. Helmuth von Moltke may have said this in grander prose, but true is true. I once asked Natasha what her battle plan was in case we were separated in a looming fight against Clan Ice Hellion. She asked me, "Who will attack first?" I told her, "The Ice Hellions." She said, "How can I explain my battle plans before I see what they will do?" After the battle, she showed me her calculations. She had drawn up no fewer than 17 response scenarios, 3 of which I would have suggested the opposite of her plans. When I pointed that out, Natasha smiled. "That's you." I remember thinking then, she was correcting me. Now I know better. 17. All warfare is based on deception. This should have been written down much earlier. 18. When able to attack, we must seem unable. When maneuvering forces, we must appear inactive. When we are near, we must make the enemy believe we are far away. When far away, we must make him believe we are near. 19. Hold out baits to entice the enemy, feign disorder, then crush him. If you feign disorder and then show mercy, enemy commanders are more likely to believe in your good fortune rather than your superior stratagem. This is not a moment for subtlety. Make it clear. 20. If the enemy is secured all points, be prepared for him. If the enemy is in superior strength, evade him. Better to retreat and be thought incompetent than advance a losing strategy and remove all doubt. 21. If your opponent is short-tempered, seek to irritate him, pretend to be weak, and encourage his arrogance. 22. If he is resting, harass him. If his forces are united, separate them. 23. Attack your enemy where he is unprepared. Appear where you are not expected. 24. These military stratagems must not be divulged beforehand. This passage has also been translated as these strategies cannot be determined before the situation actually develops. A very different read. 25. The commander who wins a battle makes many calculations before the battle is fought. The commander who loses a battle makes a few calculations beforehand. And if many calculations lead to victory and few calculations to defeat, what about those who make no calculation at all? By attention to this point, I can foresee who is expected to win or lose. Planning whether for a quick raid or a full campaign will always involve forecasting. Before a mercenary command hires on with any employer, they must understand the ramifications of the contract and any potential conflict. This may be more important than the contract's financial clauses, whether the pay will cover all contingency expenses, salvage and repair, death benefits. Do you want your name associated with the sovereign/nation/conflict? When, not if, the shooting starts. Who are you most likely to face? Are you likely to be victorious? If you can't figure it out on your own, at least check the over-under from Solaris 7. Audio log. End recording. This has been an excerpt from Sun Tzu: The Art of War, translated and annotated by Jamie Wolf. And that brings us to an end of another deployment of BungleTech. Before we bid you adieu, allow me to share some words of wisdom from Senior Clan Kodama Technician Klint.
Honorable MechWarriors, this is your technician reminding you that Inferno SRM ammo is not to be used to cook rations. As much as warm rations are great for morale, the chemicals used in the ammunition will cause health problems.
Wise advice. As Sun Tzu taught, opportunities multiply as they are seized. If you haven't yet, now is the moment to strike with precision and speed. Leave us a review on your podcast platform. Swift actions win the day. Until next time, MechWarriors. Good fortunes on the battlefield. Selah.
All podcast objectives complete. Podcast shutdown sequence initiated.